Despite inflicting billions in losses, the recent CrowdStrike outage has triggered a wave of transparency and improvements across the cybersecurity industry. How are other companies besides CrowdStrike going to take these lessons learned and update their processes to mitigate future risks? Ransomware gangs are now exploiting a VMware ESXi vulnerability to gain full admin control and wreak havoc on virtual machines. Which vulnerabilities are they exploiting, and what can organizations do to protect themselves? Cybercriminals have exploited a misconfiguration in Proofpoint's email routing system to send millions of convincing spoofed phishing emails impersonating major companies and evading typical security measures in a campaign that's now dubbed EchoSpoofing. And finally, Stargazer Goblin's sophisticated malware distribution network, leveraging over 3,000 fake GitHub accounts, now evades detection with alarming efficacy. How can developers protect their GitHub repositories from being exploited by these malicious actors? You're listening to the Daily Decrypt. Ransomware gangs are now exploiting a VMware ESXi vulnerability tracked as CVE 2024-37085 to wreak havoc on virtual machines. Microsoft researchers discovered this flaw, which allows attackers to add new users to the ESX admins group, granting full admin privileges on ESXi hypervisors. The bug has been patched as of June 25th with ESXi 8.0, but many systems remain unpatched and still at risk. If your organization uses ESXi hypervisors, specifically ones that are joined to an Active Directory domain, attackers could gain full control, steal sensitive data, move laterally throughout your network, and even encrypt your hypervisor's file system. Microsoft has identified 3 main tactics to exploit this vulnerability that can be used by ransomware gangs. First, you can add the ESX admins group to the domain and then add a user to that group. Second, you can rename any group in the domain to ESX admins and add users to that group, or use an existing group member. And finally, what's called an ESXi hypervisor privileges refresh, where assigning other groups admin privileges will not remove them from the ESX admins group. And yes, we have seen this vulnerability exploited in the wild, specifically targeting North American engineering firms by ransomware artists you may have heard, like Black Basta and Akira, where they used tools like CobaltStrike and PyPyCats to steal domain admin credentials and move laterally. So if you're using ESXi connected to an Active Directory domain, make sure you've updated ESXi to 8.0U3 and review your security settings. A massive scam campaign has exploited a flaw in Proofpoint's email routing to send millions of spoofed phishing emails from big names like Best Buy, IBM, and Nike. Hackers exploited a misconfiguration in Proofpoint's defenses, making their phishing emails look legit with authenticated SPF and DKIM signatures, which essentially allows these emails to bypass major security protections, tricking recipients into clicking all kinds of links that can lead to anything from credit card skimmers, info stealers, malware downloads, you name it. And it's important to know that these emails look very legit, like they're actually coming from Best Buy or from IBM or from Disney. And that's because of an attack that occurred in February of this year, where 8,000 subdomains of major companies were hijacked and stolen to be used in phishing emails. And now this is where things get a little technical and involves a little bit of knowledge of how records work when routing email addresses, but essentially a subdomain such as marthastewart.msn.com links their records to a new domain such as marthastewartmsn.com. Then that new domain is abandoned, but the records are still linked to that subdomain. Given some time, that subdomain is then acquired with the records still linked to that MSN subdomain, and it can be used to send very convincing phishing emails. And if you'd like more information on this type of attack, which I find very interesting, it really highlights the creativity of these attackers, then check out the links in the show notes below. There's some really cool diagrams, and if you're watching along on YouTube, you'll be able to see some screenshots from those articles to help illustrate the points being made. But even if your company hasn't received these emails yet, it's really important to stay up to date on the cybersecurity news so that you know what could be coming and how to protect yourself from it in the future. A threat actor named Stargazer Goblin has created 3,000 fake GitHub accounts to spread malware, somehow raking in over $100,000 in illicit profits. Stargazer Goblin uses these fake accounts to distribute malware like Atlantida Stealer and Redline by creating repositories with malicious links. These accounts mimic legitimate activity starring, forking, and watching repositories in order to avoid detection. And if you're not familiar with GitHub, which I'm sure you are, but no shame if you're not, of course, it's where a lot of individuals all the way up to enterprises store their code base. But with the social media model becoming so popular, GitHub has sort of, created this model that's similar to social media. If someone makes an update or a new repository update is released, that you can like them, you can star repositories, favorite them, leave comments, all of this stuff. So it works similar to how social media bots work, where they are interacting with sites to appear legitimate. What's super sneaky about the Stargazer Goblin, though, is if GitHub bans one of these accounts, Stargazer Goblin quickly updates their phishing repositories with new links, making their malware network resilient and hard to take down. If you download software or games from GitHub, you could unknowingly install malware that steals your information, so it's important to always verify the legitimacy of the repositories and downloads. And finally, yes, we're still talking about CrowdStrike. It was one of the biggest IT outages of all time, affecting 8.5 million systems with the blue screen of death. And a lot of bad has come out of this attack, from attackers exploiting vulnerable systems to the users who are trying to bring those systems back online with phishing emails and calls and all of that stuff. But there's a little bit of a silver lining here, because this mess has made other cybersecurity giants like Fortinet, SecureWorks, and Bitdefender reevaluate their own update process. David Weston from Microsoft explains that security vendors use kernel drivers for deep system access, but we've all been made aware that that comes with a high level of risk. Basically, if it crashes, you're going to see what happened with CrowdStrike happen all over again. It's not going to be pretty, but vendors can minimize kernel usage, making your system safer and more resilient. He writes, security vendors can use minimal sensors that run in kernel mode for data collection and enforcement, limiting exposure to availability issues. The remainder of the key product functionality includes managing updates, parsing content, and other operations can occur isolated within user mode, where recovery is still possible. He also encourages third-party developers to look at how Microsoft tests and signs its drivers, and to explore alternate ways of distributing them to users, maybe through Windows Update. And he's shining light on how Microsoft is trying to help third-party vendors safely update their products, to work with them to reduce the need for kernel drivers, and to provide enhanced isolation and anti-tampering capabilities in the Windows operating system.
This has been the Daily Decrypt. If you found your key to unlocking the digital domain, show your support with a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It truly helps us stand at the frontier of cyber news. Don't forget to connect on Instagram or catch our episodes on YouTube. Until next time, keep your data safe and your curiosity alive.